That's a perfect example of finding a way to monetize around PT as a service rather than directly through it by billing insurance. Hey there, Rafi with the Better Outcomes Show here. And imagine running a healthcare practice, let's just say a physical therapy clinic or something like that, where every single patient visit is free. No copays, no billing headaches, no insurance or authorizations, just care. Might sound crazy, right? But what if I told you that it's not only possible, but it could actually be profitable? So in this episode, what I want to do is break down an old book. I read it over a decade ago, but I just started revisiting it. It's called Free: The Future of a Radical New Price by Chris Anderson. We're going to explore kind of the idea of the book itself and then how it applies to healthcare, specifically how clinicians can reimagine their business models to offer services or clinical services at no cost and still build a thriving business. So let's dive right in. So I first read this book, I think it came out maybe in 2010 or something like that, 2009, 2010, something around that. And I read it probably my first year or two out of grad school as a clinician. And it was an Audible book. It was free, which was part of, I guess, the catch was Mr. Anderson was trying to use the book as an experiment of the concepts in the book. So I had Audible and I had used my credit and I was like, oh, what's something else that I can get for free? And there was free, The Future of Radical Price. So I got it, started listening to it, thought it was a great book, and then put it down, and then just recently picked it up again because I was just kind of looking for something. I was going on a drive and was looking for something to kind of pass the time a little bit. And started listening to it and I thought, man, this has a lot of applications to healthcare. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the book itself, some of the concepts, and then break down the 5 main pricing models that he explains in the book and some thoughts about how they could apply to healthcare in specific. So this episode is going to be more of like a thought experiment about how maybe we take some of the a constraint-based game, if you would. If we had to deliver healthcare services, the direct-to-patient services for free, how can we monetize it in a way that we could still build a thriving business without having to charge insurance companies and the like? So this isn't about devaluing clinical care in any way. It's about finding new ways to monetize maybe around it, so instead of through it. So I'll just read from the back cover of Free: The Future of a Radical Price. He says, the costs associated with the growing online economy are trending towards zero at an incredible rate. Never in the history of human history have the primary inputs to an industrial economy fallen in price so fast and for so long. Just think that in 1961, a single transistor cost $10. Now this is 10 years ago, they're probably much cheaper now, but Intel's latest chip has 2 billion transistors and sells for about $300, or it's 0.000015 cents per transistor, effectively too cheap to price. So the traditional economics of scarcity just don't apply to bandwidth, processing power, and hard drive storage. So he's obviously going to have a big lean in the book to digital assets and digital business models. Yet this is just one engine behind the new Free, a reality that goes beyond a marketing gimmick or a cross-subsidy. Anderson points out to the growth of the reputation economy, explains different models for unleashing the power of free, and shows how to compete when your competitors are giving away what you're trying to sell. So that's basically the summary from the back cover of the book. Now, how does this apply to healthcare? Well, in healthcare, obviously, whenever we think about innovation, it's been one of my big gripes about healthcare technology and helping some of these companies go to market is that oftentimes what happens is some of their frustration is they have developed something, a tool, a software, a piece of technology that's going to make a clinician's life super, super easy, maybe super efficient. And the big challenge that they run up against when they try to go to market is who pays for it, right? Like who's the economic buyer, obviously. And healthcare can be a little challenging, especially if what you've developed is removing a piece that could be a code that's billed like a billable unit by a clinician. And because they're new and they're coming onto the market, payers sometimes are hesitant to pay for them, so the clinician can't find a direct way to monetize this software or this analysis or something like that. And so these tools that really have the ability to greatly expand the impact, the positive benefits, the clinical outcomes improvement across maybe a course of care or a population, just fail to make it to market because of that. Clinicians and organizations are stuck in this idea of we bill fee for service in order to get reimbursed. And this is the business model of healthcare, right? So this is one of those ideas where it's like, man, this book is great. I think the ideas are awesome. It does highlight some of the challenges in healthcare where we're stuck. The entire healthcare industry is really stuck in this third-party fee-for-service, for the most part, method of doing business. So it does hamper the exploration of some of these models, but we're still going to explore them. I still want to kind of this is one of those examples of maybe as a small private practice, private healthcare practice, you can experiment with some of this and be a little bit more nimble, and maybe it gives you a competitive edge when you're competing against hospital systems and the like. So anyways, so we want to reframe this idea of free care as a value generating strategy, not as like a giveaway. It's not like we're going to go into the hole and give these services away and just pay out of pocket and hopefully we monetize it on the back end, but really use it as a way, the care itself as a way to be monetized in different avenues, not directly billing insurance. Again, thought experiment here. So the idea here would be a giveaway maybe on the front end, monetize on the back end or something like that. Again, not about devaluing the clinical care itself, but finding ways to monetize around it rather than directly through that clinical care. For example, I know Tony Marentato has talked a lot about the idea of physical therapy being like a media business that happens to provide physical therapy, and the physical therapy really is just the provision of physical therapy services just feeds the content machine, right? That's a perfect example of finding a way to monetize around PT as a service rather than directly through it by billing insurance. So I'm just going to break down the 5 business models that Anderson describes in the book Free, and then kind of dive into each one. So the first one is like a freemium model, which is where you've got maybe a basic offer that's free, that's still valuable, but then there's like tiered upgrades. You've got cross subsidy, which is you give one thing away and you sell another. Something like maybe giving free care and it's subsidized by digital courses or something like that. You've got like an advertising or sponsorship model where you've got maybe free delivery of services in exchange for sponsoring or advertising, maybe research, technology, things like that, which can be very valuable, especially in the healthcare space. If you have a clinic and you say everything's free, the caveat is that the participants or the patients that come into the clinic are going to be participants in maybe ad hoc or actually legitimate scientific studies for XYZ pieces of technology or softwares or tools that are going to be hopefully validated and sold. And then you're paying the bills by charging the research institution or by charging the company that's trying to bring this product to market. Could be a pretty interesting idea. Labor exchange for data monetization. So this one gets a little hairy with patient data, but maybe something like patients get free services in exchange for data or participation in research. Obviously it would be non-identifiable or something like that. And then the last one would be a membership or community model, right? Where maybe you get free services in exchange for a low-cost membership. Something like direct primary care would fall up under this, where You can see I've got a direct primary care membership. I've been in one for several years now. It doesn't cost me any extra to go see my doctor. I can call him, text him, message him on Spruce 80 times in a week, and I'm still going to pay the same amount every month, right? So basically what you're doing is you're selling access to care instead of monetizing each individual encounter. So let's dive into each one and kind of just some ideas that could work here. So a freemium model of care. So maybe the idea is you've got a basic in-person or virtual assessment. This has been done almost to as kind of, I don't like it from a bait and switch marketing ploy. So back when I was starting the clinic or bought the clinic and I was like, okay, we're going to start driving some business. We're going to run some ads. Probably the biggest ploy, I will say it's a ploy, is you offer the community free screenings, free shoulder pain screening, free neck screenings, whatever it is, free assessments. The victims come in and they get offered a free screening, free assessment, and then they get upsold into something bigger, right? I don't mean that. I don't mean that at all. That can work, and I mean, we did it, for a while when we were first trying to build the business. I think we did it in a way that was I would consider it much different. We told people at the very beginning when they scheduled these free assessments, like, listen, this is a free assessment, and at the end of this, we're going to offer you, if it fits, if it makes sense, a plan of care. And that might be through your insurance company. It might be private pay. But I want you to be aware of that up front and not feel like we're bringing you in here to try to pressure sales you into something. This is just a free screening. You will get the screening. You'll get the results. But afterwards, we're going to have a discussion about whether or not it makes sense for you to jump into a PT or OT plan of care. And I think that piece of the conversation was always missing. Maybe the people that are running those kind of campaigns now are doing that at the front end, which in my mind would be much more ethical. But I'm talking about something completely different here. So maybe you've got a free in-person or virtual assessment. You charge for maybe add-ons, maybe custom recommendations around that, maybe in-depth evaluations, or maybe some kind of concierge practice around it. So for example, you could have an initial free physical therapy consult plus maybe paid recovery and coaching subscriptions on the back end. And again, if all of this is offered, I think that the danger with freemium, specifically in service-based businesses, is that the lack of transparency in the process. Like if you land on, I don't know, repmate.io, for example, is something we built at the clinic. You land on repmate.io. It's a platform. It's an application. You basically upload a PDF or an Excel sheet from your personal trainer with all your exercise programs, and it creates a smart program that you can follow on your phone, basically, instead of having to check things off on a paper in the weight room. If you land on that website, you can see there's a free model, and then what you get under the free model. There's a paid model, what you get under the paid model, and like a premium model, what you get under the premium model. And it's very upfront at the very beginning. Software companies can do that because you're downloading a tool, downloading a piece of software, downloading an app, and part of the process is, okay, what do I get and how much is it? With the piece that's missing in healthcare, that has been missing in my experience in healthcare, is that's not really made public to whoever accepts one of these free screenings, and it really does become a bait and switch. They think they're going to get some help, and then really they just get like a useless evaluation or an assessment, a screening that basically confirms that they're having shoulder pain, for example. Like, oh, I know I have shoulder pain. Maybe they get a little bit of, well, you have shoulder pain because your rotator cuff is injured, or because your periscapular dysfunction is going on, or you got a pec injury, whatever it is. They get some very high level, non-actionable information, and then they get pressure sold into a plan of care for physical therapy. So that's not what I'm talking about here. I would think a freemium model of care might work like you come in, we do an initial evaluation or consultation, and then you get a detailed report. This is what's going on. And then if you want me to walk you through the recovery, I can definitely put a plan together for you, and this is what it would look like, and this is how much it would cost, right? And the patient knows that ahead of time when they're coming in. Like, okay, I'm getting this free evaluation. There's going to be an offer at the end if it makes sense. Otherwise, I feel like you get caught. It's just a patient experience, customer service thing. You get like this bait and switch feeling. So freemium model of care is an option. I just explained kind of how it could work, how it might work. Yeah, and I think that in service-based businesses like healthcare, you just want to be transparent throughout. What's the purpose of the virtual assessment? Is it really just to sell me a plan of care, or am I going to get something actually valuable afterwards that I can then take and use outside without you? So we do this with it's actually not a freemium model, but we do like home accessibility assessments at the clinic, and there's a 3-tiered option. And the first one is still pricey. It's still a paid service, but it's basically the assessment and all of the individualized recommendations, right? So we do this. We walk through the patient's home. We do they get like 12-page reports that have pictures of the doorways and the bathroom and our recommendations and links to potential pieces of equipment that they can purchase, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we basically give this to them, and we're like, listen, this is the roadmap. You go hire yourself a contractor, and they can follow this blueprint step by step. And as long as they know how to read, they'll be able to basically fulfill all of the recommendations in the report. And that's something super valuable. We've explored doing like, how would we do that for free? Haven't gotten there yet, but it's the next tier up would be, okay, we're going to do a walkthrough with you before the project is complete. We'll even do 1 or 2 calls with a few prospective contractors so that, you can be assured that the recommendations that we're making are being communicated effectively to the contractor, so that they're going to implement it, when they actually start knocking down walls or widening doorways or whatever it is. And that's a way of like increasing value with the cost, right? So you could do the same thing with a freemium model. You just, again, you want to be upfront with it at the beginning. The next business model in the free book is cross-subsidy, or this idea of give one away and sell another. So really basic level here would be like, we give free physical therapy care away. We're just going to keep trucking down that line because we picked it at the beginning. In exchange for we're going to sell digital courses, maybe premium content, maybe some people might even get into selling supplements and rehab tools and other products. But the example here would be, you give away maybe post-op physical therapy for post-op hip or knee or shoulder, but you sell maybe a home recovery kit, or you use that content to then create courses that you're going to sell to other physical therapists, for example. Continuing education courses built off clinical practice, in my mind, is a really good idea. Digital courses and recovery programs for patients themselves that could then be monetized outside of the care. So maybe you treat one patient, you record, with their consent of course, you record the treatment, you record the progress over time, you then break out maybe in another segment or module the protocol or the process of care that you're following and the outcomes, the research, make it legitimate, and then sell that to other physical therapists as a CEU course. It's not very difficult to go get certified to deliver, to become, a person able to deliver CEU courses. And that opens up a huge market of potential revenue that could be derived from free clinical care, right? So the idea is that you're giving the care away for free on the front end, but you're using it to create a product or create a service that you're going to sell on the back end. Again, digital courses, premium content, et cetera, et cetera. The next one would be advertising or sponsorship. Every time we get into this, we have to be a little bit more wary because of healthcare and data, HIPAA, and privacy laws and all of that. But you could essentially deliver free digital care or content. You monetize that attention through sponsorships. So maybe DME suppliers, apps, fitness tools, you name it. So maybe there's a free app-based pain education program or digital health care program with ad placements from brace companies. Again, this one is probably fraught with more ethical considerations. You want to make sure that you don't want to have the sponsorship dictate care or influence care in an undue way. But let's say, for example, you treat a lot of patients who do have chronic pain, and there's some tools out there. I know Alpha Stim is one that gets thrown around a lot, or other non-pharmacological pain management companies. I would think as an ethical person, you'd want to vet them, validate them, and look at their clinical research before you go ahead and hawk it at your patients. But it could be a pretty good symbiotic relationship where you develop a digital healthcare program, and we've done episodes on the research around digital healthcare programs. I'll link to them in the show notes. But there's good research supporting the use of digital healthcare programs. Maybe it's app-based or mobile-based for patients with musculoskeletal conditions, and maybe something like ad placements or maybe affiliate marketing or something like that could be a beneficial option. Again, you want to handle this ethically, and you want to be upfront with all of the way you make money to patients so that they are aware too, and they can make informed decisions. And you want to show and prove that the sponsorships, the advertising isn't affecting your care or the recommendations in the app, because again, that would be an ethical quandary you don't want to find yourself in, but it is an option. So advertising, sponsorship model. Another way would be like you're going to treat patients for free for your YouTube channel or something like that, Patreon, and monetize that way, in which case you kind of take some of that ethical issues out of the way, because then you're not like taking money from a company that's trying to sell to this population. You're just monetizing the content in general, and the way you're creating the content is by delivering free care. That's another option. That's more of like the Tony Meritato way of doing it, right? Labor exchange or data monetization. This one I feel like is a huge opportunity for private practices in the physical therapy space, but then in other spaces as well. The idea that patients would get free service in exchange for their data and or participation in research. I've done, I don't know, probably in the last couple years, no less than a dozen and a half, 18 or 20 projects for companies whose one of their main goals in their go-to-market strategy, breaking into the U.S. market, was validating their tool, their device, their application, whatever it was. And the way they wanted to do that was pay a clinic or pay an organization to do a study to validate what they had created, right? And the way we did it was with a couple of these companies was, I've got some contacts in at some universities from my time as a professor, and it was like, okay, they're going to set up the design, the research, the project for us, the research methodologies. We're going to go through IRB here. There's third-party IRB companies that you can go through. We're going to find a pool of potential clients that fit XYZ criteria. We're going to run a short, small sample size study to validate, to get initial validation. And then the company uses that to sell their products now, or to go get FDA certification if it's required, things like that. And there's really a good symbiotic relationship where there are these companies that have developed something that they believe in good faith is going to improve clinical outcomes for, neck pain, back pain, whatever it is. And you've got a clinician who's got a pool of patients who fit that demographic, who fit the qualification standards for a potential study, and they just don't know each other, right? So the idea of building a business around delivering free healthcare services in exchange for data or research participation, I think is a great way of doing it, of monetizing free healthcare in a way that, again, is not super unethical, especially like we're talking physical therapy, occupational therapy, things where it's not like you're not dealing with like terminally ill patients, and there's the risk of injury is much lower, risk of adverse effects are much lower. But even if they are, I personally feel like if you want to participate in some research, even if it's not FDA approved, you should be able to, because it's your body, it's your healthcare, right? So that is an opportunity that I feel like is going to become more and more of a real viable option for healthcare providers over the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, I get emails, but just because of my work, I get emails and inquiries all the time. Do you know a clinic that would be willing to trial this piece of software or this tool in their clinic? We'd pay them, or we'd give it to them for free even, in exchange for their feedback. They can beta test it. All of that is great opportunities to monetize healthcare services, allow them to be, if nothing else, what I tell people is like, use it to make up for the Medicare cuts that we hear about every year, right? Like if you're taking a little bit of money to trial a piece of software, a tool, technology in your clinic, and you're noticing some improvements, it's helping your patients, it's a win-win-win for everybody. The patient's getting access to something you probably wouldn't have paid for or otherwise wanted to afford. They're getting the benefit of that treatment. You're getting the added benefit of some maybe additional money or decreased costs if you're getting the software or the tool for free. And then the company themselves are getting valuable feedback from users, direct from users. This is how it's working. This is how it's not working. This is what needs to be fixed, et cetera. It can help everybody in the product life cycle, right? So labor in exchange for data monetization or something like that. And then the last would be a membership model or a community model, something where you've got the free services, but they're gated by a low-cost monthly or yearly membership. Some things that I can think of here would be something like a movement club, for example, with like free unlimited PT visits for $30 a month or something like that. But maybe you've got you're creating content for fall prevention or something like that, or you're running group courses or group programs for fall prevention, maybe at a local community center or in your local clinic or something like that, in the clinic you own, and you're monetizing those services by this monthly membership. And one of the side benefits is they get a free PT consult out of the deal or something like that, right? So you could deliver free services in exchange for kind of this recurring revenue model. Something like we've explored, and I've done some of my own thought experiments around like a direct primary care, like a subscription-based PT or OT service. It just tends to not work for the long term because physical and occupational therapy tends to be more seasonal dependent, not seasonal, but like course of care dependent. Like you injure your knee, you don't need to keep like PT on call for a year and a half for that knee. It's usually the 6 or 12 weeks that you need to work it out, to get stronger, to improve your motion, and then you don't need PT anymore. So it really is like episodic, right? It's episodic instances of care. And we have explored doing some of that with some of those patients. We have a good relationship with our direct primary care clinic in the area, in the city where I live, and we've tried to do some of that for them, like a monthly model for those patients, kind of in the same line with with direct primary care. And then we just know that this patient's only going to be on it for 2 months because that's probably all they need or something like that. So there's that. I think one of the big things in the book that Anderson talks about is the idea of this reputation economy, which I think is worth exploring, especially in healthcare. Like, you want to give a valuable service away for free in order to build long-term patient loyalty and word of mouth. So we've done this a couple times for some patients, right? Like done some pro bono here and there in exchange for that reputation, right? The goodwill and word of mouth referrals that we would get. So the more you give, the more trust you can earn. And in healthcare, especially, trust is currency, right? Like if you don't have, we hate to get in the Google game review, but like if a patient is looking for physical therapy, for example, and they have one clinic that's got 1 review and another clinic that's got 150, they're most likely going to call the one with 150. We get calls all the time at the clinic that We're one of the only, I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if we're the only, but we're one of the only PT clinics in our city that has 100% 5-star reviews. And we get calls in the clinic all the time that are a patient that basically says, I was looking for PT. Y'all have the best reviews. When can you get me in? So there is something to that, right? So as clinicians, we're in the business of building relationships long term, and sometimes maybe giving something away at the beginning of a relationship could create value that earns you a patient or patients for life, right? We've done some of these things where it's like, okay, this is not something I do this. There was a patient that used to come in, and she always had she had this rollator walker. It was falling apart. And because of some of my previous work doing mobility clinics for DBHCD here in Georgia, I just had some of the know-how on how to fix some of these things. And it was totally unpaid. But, for a while there, I was replacing casters. I was replacing brakes. I was hooking these things up. It was totally for free. I was ordering the parts on, from Performance Health or from Amazon or something like that at no cost to the patient. And I did it for a couple reasons. One, because the patient really needed it. And it was just being a good person. But then the other side effect was this patient then went and told all their friends, and we got a lot of word of mouth referrals from this person because we just took the extra 15, 20 minutes to replace the brake on their rollator walker or something like that, fixed, tightened up the handles or whatever it is. It cost a little bit of money up front. It was a free service, but it won us some patient loyalty. So anyways, that's all I've got so far. This idea of how do we monetize healthcare services without actually billing insurance companies? What if you had to give it away for free, right? So some of the hypothetical models we talked about was this idea of giving away visits but making money on digital products, maybe branded mobility equipment or something like that, coaching subscriptions, maybe a therapist offering post-op care but sells, maybe digital recovery protocols or something like that, or affiliate tools we talked about. The idea of research and access to the data, all of those things have potential in physical therapy and occupational therapy and in healthcare in general. I think private practices are much better poised to explore some of these because we don't have the encumbrance of big, giant overhead and the inertia of having to do things the way we've always done it and bill insurance companies. So I would just say, as kind of a parting thought here, but let's take whatever service you have. If you had to give it away for free, constraint-based game here, what else could you monetize around it? That would just be a good thought experiment for you to do. Hopefully, if you listen and you're running your own private practice, you have a day that all you do is think about your practice or that you work on the business instead of being in the clinic. For me, that day started when I first bought the clinic and started running it. It was Fridays for me. Every Friday, wasn't seeing patients, just thinking about the business and how to fix it. So piece of advice, go do that if you're not already doing that. And then what you should do is think about, if I had to do what I'm doing now for free, if I had to give it away for free, what else could I monetize around it? Okay, so that's all I've got for now. If you like the show, head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating or review, shoot me a message or tag me on LinkedIn. If you have an idea that I didn't cover or that you think would be a great addition, I'd love to hear. Shoot me an email, info@rehabupracticesolutions.com. Is a good way to get a hold of me. Go to YouTube, like us, subscribe, do all the things. But until the next time, folks, be safe, be healthy. I will talk to you then.